These scars long have yearned for your tender caress, to bind our fortunes. Damn what the stars are, rend my heart open.
Hey guys, welcome to Downward Thrust and a critical close-up of The Witcher 2 and The Witcher 3. It's been a few months since I've beaten The Witcher 3, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about my time with it and how I truly feel about the game. The creeping thought that has stuck with me until putting the pen to the paper of this video is this: The Witcher 2 was a far more enjoyable experience than The Witcher 3. Before I progress too much further though, I want to point out a common misconception when it comes to saying a competitive statement such as that. No, I don't hate The Witcher 3. Quite the opposite, I find it to be one of the best RPGs in recent memory and full of landmark positives and overflowing with some of the most refined gameplay and technical systems of our generation. The world, it's so dense, bright yet mysteriously dark in its most hidden corners, and the characters. Geralt, the statuesque Witcher, so serious in tone yet undercut by some amazing charm, humor, and compassion. And Yennefer, who can resist a character such as Yennefer? Strong and wildly independent, and at the core driven by a wicked amount of dedication, idealism, power, and harbors two qualities that make any man weak in the knees. She's irresistible, and she plays with your emotions. And then of course we can't forget about Ciri, a character more motivated not by her idealism, but her own personal mission of misunderstanding through the game. Stubborn, clever, charismatic, and dangerous. It's a deadly combination. And those are to say nothing of the countless other amazing characters that you'll run into along the way. The attention to detail in the environments and the carefully crafted animations, the unforgettable music, and the lessons that the game teaches you if you're listening closely enough. Conviction, patience, power, and love. It all makes for an amazing experience when you wrap yourself up with it, and it makes it very difficult to find faults with The Witcher 3 in lieu of this. And it makes writing this very sensitive and challenging. But upon further analysis, I do believe that The Witcher 2 was a better game for a single reason: the linearity of the story. In The Witcher 3, the open world and the free-form pacing provide space. The range of possibilities for gameplay when the open space of the game is spread over such a huge distance are only limited by the activities, the characters, the quests, and the things you can do in it. At first glance, it truly feels like an ocean of a game is in front of you, like standing on a tall cliff overlooking the sea. And that is true, The Witcher 3 gives you the space to enjoy many great adventures. But if there's one trait that is sacred and rare to many great RPGs, it's good pacing. I talk about it all the time on this channel, about how it's just as important how and when you engage in activities as the activities themselves. Good pacing is difficult to describe in specific examples, but I can best describe The Witcher 2 as a game where everything was placed perfectly, puzzle pieces put together to build a working puzzle. Side quests, bosses, enemy encounters, long sections of dialogue, cutscenes for character development, and more importantly, plot twists. You never felt like you were doing too much of anything at one point because the developers managed it for you. Throw in an open world, however, and that stuff becomes harder to manage because now you're in charge of building that puzzle. The open world of Witcher 3 had an adverse effect on many things that The Witcher 2 succeeded with. Let's start with the combat. In The Witcher 2, combat had two things going for it. It wasn't too frequent to ever become repetitive, and there was a good variety in the enemies thanks to the new locations that the game progressed through. The Witcher 3's open world had so many enemy encounters that I no longer felt excited when combat began because it was so frequent and often repetitive. And despite the game's bestiary being massive, many enemies were only encountered in Witcher contracts or in rare locations on the overworld. I understand it's a realistic approach to enemy placement, but it got tiresome when a good portion of fights were against wolves, bandits, bears, and God forbid the sirens in Skellige. Combat is only made more troublesome when you factor in The Witcher 3's extremely imbalanced difficulty curve, which seems to be an issue in almost every single open world RPG I play. Either the game is too easy because there's so many side objectives, enemies, and quests available to you that you outscale the enemies, both in power of your character and your competency with the game's mechanics, or it's too hard because you don't do enough of the side stuff to power up. So it's either not long before enemies start to feel like minor obstacles rather than dangerous threats, or every time you see an enemy you lament because you know you're going to get your ass handed to you. And if the latter, how does the game respond, or how do you respond to the game? It asks that you go back, to backtrack on your personal progress, to level up more and do more side activities that you did not want to do in the first place. And if the former, well then every fight feels meaningless. Some sort of scaling should have been present in the game's quests to prevent Geralt from overpowering everything, because the issue is not that the game had easy combat, it really didn't, but rather that Geralt will be over-leveled for a majority of players given the density of the open world. The Witcher 2's difficulty was one of the best things about the game because it actually required the use of alchemy and other systems because you were forced to play the game as designed due to the proper pacing. Next, let's look at the economy that arises from that combat and the missions you ventured out and completed in The Witcher 3. It was imbalanced because it's impossible to control an open world economy without scaling difficulty. Instead of doing Witcher contracts, smarter players simply went out fishing in Skellige and sold their bounties for more than what the contracts were paying out. So by making yourself rich this way, and after crafting some of the best armor in the game, The Witcher 3's side missions then became ostensibly pointless because money became pointless. There just is not a good sense of reward for any of the game's content because the game has not been controlled to levy out the rewards based off what point you're at during the game and how much content was possible to consume. A linear game such as The Witcher 2 doesn't have to deal with that problem.
Mark this. When I got pressed into the infantry in 1242, I promised my beloved Let I'd return alive, whole.
Finally, the content itself was another problem. In The Witcher 2, the main story was beautifully crafted as a linear adventure. The prologue opens up with Geralt in chains, in a dungeon, presumably accused of murdering King Foltest. After convincing your capturer of your innocence, Geralt must then escape the dungeon and meet up with Roche and Triss, and set off on a boat to Flotsam, where we then immediately meet Yorveth, learn about his qualms with Letho, set off to rescue Triss from the Kingslayer, meet up with Philippa Ironheart and Edion, and prepare for the battle in the dwarven city of Vergen, and finally set out to Loch Moin to confront Letho and conclude the game. This linearity created something that many games fail to achieve: urgency. When things feel urgent, you're compelled to participate, invest in the outcomes of what's going on. I never got that feeling from The Witcher 3, which was very unfortunately populated with an MMO-style filler content, quest markers far as the eye can see. The Witcher 3 was a confusing riddle for me, as I knew how important it was to find Ciri and Yennefer, yet at every corner I was asked by some random quest giver to pick flowers, beat up a thug, or collect 15 bear asses. There was something very artificial about the countless monster nests and the smugglers' caches, and it was just the exact thing I didn't want to see from the game because it just dilutes the sense of urgency and the cause of the game. It takes us out of the experience when we should be directly in it. And I don't mean in the game as the player, I mean in the game as Geralt. I spent 25 hours in The Witcher 2, enthralled, totally attached to Triss, and enamored by the greater cause of the game. I wanted to get Letho, I really wanted to get him, if not for his sabotage of Geralt, but more because all of the content leading up to the finale was built for the sole purpose of creating that motivation for me in design. The Witcher 3 felt like a series of trivial distractions built around the center of an amazing game, but it ultimately gave way to a tiresome and unsatisfying 100 hours of open world fluff when I take off my rose-tinted glasses. But of course, if you carve away all the side missions and stick to the main story, it's amazing, no one will deny that. But apples to apples, for those reasons, The Witcher 2 beats out The Witcher 3 at every stretch, and I can confidently say it's one of the finest crafted RPGs of our time. I hope everyone gets a chance to experience it with an open mind and an open heart. And thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to Downward Thrust now for more discussion analysis videos and all things gaming, and have a kick-ass day.